Let's go, turn that shit up, man.
Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? You come home after a long day, you need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone at the fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft. Then tap on a beer like genuine draft. Study all the players, look close at the stats. A QB first, then a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio, then on your screen you see Jackle, and Claudio. It's a take, never lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production. Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keepin' it fantasy, it's a football fantasy.
Yo, what's up, everybody? Yeah, I know I was gonna do it, but what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Keepin' It Fantasy. I'm not Claudio. Obviously, we didn't get the yo in today. Claudio is out antiquing or doing whatever. You know, he had planned doing. I think it's antiquing. I think he had mentioned antiquing.
He's peddling his wares up in Pennsylvania.
That's exactly what he's on. Hopefully, he goes ahead and picks some good antiques, better than some of his fantasy picks. No, just kidding. Just taking some shots. Just a little. I mean, one or two of them were kind of questionable, but one or two of them for me as well have been kind of questionable this year. Jackal, how are you, man? Another week in fantasy. Glad to see you. Glad to be here. Wild fantasy weekend. How'd you feel? How was your weekend?
Dude, I'll be honest. I got kicked in the freaking stones all weekend. It was tough for me, man. I think I took one win down out of like the 9 leagues I'm in. I was 1 in 8. I think it was brutal, man. Honestly, it was no fun for me this weekend. I won in the fantasy. I won in the TTNL league, which is nice. I had a nice little comeback from my boy Debo Samuel came from behind and took care of Cody for me.
Yeah, Debo was exciting. Debo's an exciting player. When I saw that play yesterday, I was just like, oh my God. First of all, Ramsey jumping it. I thought Ramsey had the pick. And then when I saw Debo came down with it and then the run after was just nasty, man. Nasty. But I'm glad to be here. Glad to have you here. Yeah. Let's get into it. It was a wild weekend in fantasy. I keep hearing CK Cool Kennedy's voice when he had said, it's a crapshoot. Like it's a crapshoot week in and week out. Like you said, you're 1 in 8 this week. I'm doing okay. Like I won again in the TTNL league, but like you said, there's players that I'm expecting to do good, and they just don't have a good week. Like there's teams that I'm expecting to go ahead and have a big week, maybe add some fantasy points to my to my team, but they just don't have a good week. Couple of big games though, points galore. I want to start out with Detroit and Seattle. Nobody would have thought. I mean, you kind of figured Detroit was going to put up some points, being the number 1 offense in the league, but you didn't think Seattle and Detroit were going to get into shootouts.
Smith, baby.
And nobody saw Geno Smith at the beginning of the year for the Seattle Seahawks having the year that he's having. Geno under the radar, having a monster year. I mean, you know the story of Geno Smith.
Oh, yeah.
The Jets being ridiculed, cast off, forgotten about, and then here he comes with the Seattle Seahawks having so far a career year. Big points in that game. I was shocked that, TJ Hawkinson just what do you have? 179 yards. Yeah. That guy's name is going to be called a lot more this season. I think the Lions are going to start putting up a lot more points. Yeah. But how'd you feel about that game? I mean, I watched a little bit of it. I caught most of it right now. I had talked to you watching the end of it in the condensed game, but it was a wild one. No defense whatsoever, but a lot of fantasy points.
You almost had all 3 skill positions with top fantasy performers in that game from Detroit, outside of Jamal Williams, but you had it was just wild. I couldn't get over it. It was we were talking about it, like you said, before we came on here, but I thought Geno Smith was going to have a good week this week. I just felt, going into the game, we had talked about it last show. He was my kind of guy, one of the waiver wires I thought maybe you should target if you're streaming quarterbacks. Came to fruition, but yeah, you're right, man. I did not anticipate the numbers that came out of that game. And there were a couple of games across the league that had, there were a couple that just, there were teams that put up monster fantasy numbers in respects to your leagues. Like Claudio had a 200-point league. In two of my leagues, I saw a couple 200-point leagues, which I was, then you look who they had, and they had some Detroit guys, they had some Tampa guys, some Seattle guys. So yeah, it was pretty intense. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that coming from Detroit and whoever's playing Detroit.
And it's no surprise the top two quarterbacks in fantasy this week, Jared Goff, number one, Geno Smith. Number two, and I mean, those guys put up numbers, like I said, 378 yards for Goff, 320 yards for Geno Smith, 4 touchdowns for Goff, 2 for Smith. It
one
was
on the ground, I think. For
one on the ground,
Geno,
I believe.
Right?
Yeah. Actually, 7 for 49 on the ground, 1 touchdown. He had 3 total. That's right. I don't want to take it away from him. No, like I said, he's been amazing. Like, there's nothing bad I could say about Geno Smith. I don't know what it is. We talked about that move, and before we go ahead and switch, we had talked about Geno Smith, or we didn't think Geno Smith coming in. It was the Russell Wilson talk going to Denver. Yeah. And what is Seattle going to do? Who is Seattle going to be? Like, what's their identity? Well, I think Geno Smith's doing a pretty good job. Brashad Penny, he was he was pretty solid this week too. He had 151 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. So he was top 5 in fantasy for running back. So a lot of points being scored in Seattle just makes you wonder. It was like, was it Pete Carroll
or Russell Wilson? Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, right?
Right. And I think right now you're seeing growing pains with Russ. We have to see the finished product, but what Geno's doing, you can't look past. He's doing a great job up in Seattle. A lot of points being scored up there. A lot of good fantasy quality players on each team. Fantasy quality, right? Like we're talking about fantasy, we're talking about stats here, because here stats kind of matter. But moving on to another game, another big game, that Kansas City and Tampa Bay game. Tampa Bay looked sluggish. They didn't look good. But if you had Mike Evans got off a bit. 8 receptions, 103 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tom Brady even put in a big game. 385 yards, 3 touchdowns. It was early in the game where they struggled. It didn't look good. I mean, if you're Tampa Bay, I think you're okay. Like you're gonna run into the Saints. I don't think the Saints offense is gonna be all that this year. I don't think the Panthers are gonna challenge anybody. I think they might be one of the worst teams in the league. And then you obviously have the Falcons, who are in every game. I think as long as the Bucs kind of right the ship. I mean, they have Tom Brady. He's got a lot of other issues going on, if you know what I mean. But I still see them as a very, very strong fantasy football team. I mean, you're going to have a lot of quality fantasy football players coming out of there. I was trying to look up my guy, Fournette. Fournette, not a particularly good game.
Well, they had to pass. They were down, so they threw the ball.
They had to pass. They were down. He had 7 targets. He caught 7. He had 7 for 7 on receptions. 7 targets, 7 receptions, 57 yards and a touchdown. Just that ground game was not going anywhere with the Kansas City Chiefs. You got to give them all the credit in the world. Let's go into these injuries because there's a lot of them. I want to talk about them. The biggest one of the weekend, Tua Tagovailoa.
Thursday night. That was tough.
Thursday night, yeah. It was tough to watch. Fantasy owners. I
hate Thursday night football games.
Right. I was critical, or not critical, excuse me. I was expecting him to have a bad game the week prior when he got knocked out the first time. He should have never been on the football field. No. He should have never been on the football field.
Everybody got fired.
Everybody saw it. He should have never been on the football field. I feel bad for Tua. Prayers up for Tua. He was having a career year. He is having a career year. And I want to just go ahead and list off some of his stats right now. He's 80 for 115, 69.6 completion rating, has 1,035 yards on the year, 8 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. I mean, he was starting to lead that team, starting to do, and Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are a big help, but Tua has to get him the ball, and Tua's doing a good job of it. Now he's out. Now he hurts you in fantasy. I don't think Teddy Bridgewater does anything for you. I don't think it's going to be like rough for the wide receivers as well. I think
you'll see a little dip in production. I think
I think you're going to find more Tyreek Hill than Jalen Waddle. I don't know. I just feel like Teddy's going to gravitate to Tyreek more than Jalen. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there'll be an even distribution, but I just don't think with the Teddy Bridgewater experiment down there, I don't think it's going to work. I think the Dolphins are going to suffer until Tua gets back. Maybe I'm wrong. They don't have a running game, so it's like you're going to.
I think you're going to see more Raheem Mostert over there, and not Chase Edmonds. You're seeing, and speaking of Raheem Mostert, he's probably available in 50% of the leagues that you guys are in out there. So if you want to go get him, go ahead. We can talk about that later. But I think Teddy Bridgewater, he's been a starter. He's a guy that they brought in and paid decent backup money. I think he makes like $8 million a year, if I remember the contract. I could be wrong. For some odd reason that came out in my head. He makes a little more than Mitch per year, who's also a backup. So I think they're not in bad hands. And, I think the Dolphins are going to ride this out with Tua, meaning you're not going to see him come back next week. He's already been ruled out for week 5. He could probably be ruled out for week 6 because now all eyes on Miami, and they need to make sure that Tua is going to come back, tip-top shape. They're not going to – they just can't afford to have the optics of him getting banged up again really relatively quickly.
Right.
But I think you're going to see a shift, and you're right. I don't see the passing maybe as heavy to everyone. I think you're going to see him get comfortable with Tyreek Hill. I would too. I think he's going to be the guy that gives you the best chance of success. I don't know if Mike Gesicki's going to benefit from Teddy Bridgewater, but, in the past, your security blanket with your tight end, Mike McDaniels may have to draw up some new stuff in that offense because they're not the same player, Tua and Teddy. But I just think you're going to see a little bit more usage out of the 2 running backs, but I think it's going to be more Raheem Mostert out of all those guys that are going to benefit from the injury with Tua.
Well, I think the running game is going to have to step up for them because, Logan disagrees with me with Teddy. He has a strong arm. I just believe that Teddy Bridgewater is going to do a journeyman's job. He's not going to go ahead and win games for you. I think he's just going to game manage, find the open guy, and try not to lose the game for you. I don't think Teddy's going to come in there and try to take the Miami Dolphins to the Super Bowl right here. I think he's trying to, keep the ship
stop the bleeding, right? Yeah,
until Tua gets back.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I'm not going to say that out loud. Oh my God, yeah. I caught myself. I can't even believe that happened. Wow. All right. No, I caught it off before it could complete.
Oh, did you? Oh, all right. Well, lucky. There we go. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move forward. You got an injury you want to talk about?
Well, there was a couple. Speaking of quarterbacks, there's a couple of guys that got banged up. Fantasy relevance. We talked about Russ. He did kind of bang up his shoulder Sunday, so something to just keep an eye on. He was limited in practice. Not saying that it's going to keep him out, but who knows what's going on in Denver. I'd probably stay away from everybody in Denver right now just because of what's happening. Then again, as I say that, and I'm thinking out loud, they may have to throw the ball 50 times because they're not going to be able to run it. So maybe Russ is going to have to cook over there and get back to the 2018 days like we were talking about, Ivan, before we jumped on. Daniel Jones, another guy who played well, came back, showed some heart against the Bears, had a decent fantasy day. I think he had like 21-something points in a win against Chicago. Banged up ankle. If you're streaming quarterbacks, keep an eye on that. And I'm going to jump over to the running backs, man. Cordell Patterson, IR, 4 games out minimum with the knee. There's some guys that you like, I think, in the running back department for Atlanta. Why don't you speak on that? Because I think you have that teed up. I like your take on who they have in the backfield.
Yeah, definitely. Algier, I had the stat right here. What he had last week. Here
he had a nice day. I think
it was 87 yards, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. But he also added 20 in the passing, had 1 catch for 20 yards. So he had over 100 yards total in the game. Didn't have a touchdown. That went to Huntley, the third string guy.
Your guy. Yeah.
My Algier is more my guy, but I think Huntley's gonna spell him real well.
Yeah, deeper leagues. I think that's a good play, though. Honestly,
yeah.
Ivan, I like that call. I do.
Yeah, they both had 10 carries.
Yep.
They both had 10 carries. One had, like I said, 87. The other had like 50, just over 50, or maybe closer to 60 yards. I can't recall off the top of my head. I actually had the Fantasy Pros.
I'm looking.
Here we go.
Yeah.
There it is.
56 for Huntley and a touchdown. 10 carries for 56 and a touchdown for Huntley.
Okay, 56 and a touch. So it depends. Like, it all depends on, if Algier is going to be the guy to get all the yards, you're going to expect Huntley to be that guy in the red zone collecting touchdowns. So to me, it's a toss-up. It reminds me a little bit of the New England situation with Harris and Stevenson.
Okay.
It's which guy's going to get off this weekend? Who's going to be the focal point in the red zone? Who's going to be the main back when it comes to third down? Like, it's a bunch of what ifs, but I think both running backs can help you out for both teams actually. Go ahead.
I just want to add to that running back room. Damian Williams will be back week 6 coming off the IR. Keep an eye on him for guys that are, if you are kind of flush with running backs and you want to be kind of a killer on the waiver wire and take somebody out of the running now before he comes available or in need. I think that's a guy to think about because they're going to need him. He was the guy they were looking to be that RB2 there, but with Algieri coming in at as the RB3. But yeah, something to think about. Just throwing it out there. Go ahead, Ivan. I digress.
Well, I want to go back to Javonte Williams.
Yeah.
Right. Because we had a good conversation off air about the Denver Broncos, and it kind of brings in, everybody fantasy-wise with the Broncos. I think Javonte Williams is a big loss. I think he was getting ready to have a big year. I think he was ready to, break loose and start having these big type games for the Denver Broncos. You remember when Russell Wilson was good, or not when he was good? He's still good. He's still good now, but
with that elite level, like we talked about,
exactly. When he was at an elite level, or when they were talking about his trajectory being through the roof, right? Back when the Seahawks had beast mode, they had a running game. They had receivers that were trustworthy, receivers that could get open, receivers that could work with Russell when he was play action, scrambling, running around back there in the backfield, and then hey, Tyler Lockett's down there somewhere. You know what I mean? Like, it was similar to that. It was similar to that Chiefs, scramble, have Mahomes find somebody, keep the play alive, find somebody open downfield. It was similar to that, but the running game was the focus because you used the running game to set up the play action. And then if things, went wrong, Russell would improvise and throw that. I think Javonte Williams going down for the Broncos it could hurt them. It could hurt them. They're already hurting now. They're sputtering out of the gate. They're not a smooth offense right now. And then they lose one of their horses. Melvin Gordon, a little bit older. I mean, you hope that he could give you some good production. Yeah, I'm not saying that he won't, but what you were going to get out of Javonte.
He had 3.7 fantasy points, I think, after 11 touches. That was Williams. Gordon was awful anyway. He had 1.2.
Yeah, that ain't going to get it done.
Shitty. Yeah.
Right. It ain't going to get it done. So for me, Javonte going down, it really hurts Russell too. So now I'm thinking about, is Russell
short week too? They got the Thursday night game. Yeah.
On a short week, can Russell Wilson win you the game? Like, and I question that.
Take the over on his passing yards if you're betting fantasy Thursday night. If you're betting
definitely
FanDuel, bro, because he's gonna have to throw it 75 times. I think.
I question if he could win you a game. I just think that the defense is.
They can't run. No, I doubt it.
Yeah, and I know this is fantasy, but like I question if Russell could win you a game. Fantasy was decent, a little bit better this week. What, he had 27 points, you said?
I could tell you right there. I have it right in front of me here. Hold on. It was. Yeah. I think it was his best fantasy week this year, and I believe if it all says rightly, I want to say it was 27.
27.5.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, it's 237 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 attempts on the ground, 29 yards, and a touchdown. 3 touchdowns. Yeah, 3 touchdowns overall.
3-tutter day for him. Yeah.
They didn't win the game. And I know it's on, like I said, fantasy is one thing, but like think about them keying up on Russell passing the ball. They've already been keying up on him, as of late. Like think about them now with they know you're going to struggle to run the football.
Yeah.
Why don't we just go ahead and focus on the pass? I think Russell's going to suffer. I don't know. I'm looking for more of a desperate Denver Broncos offense than.
Well, that's what you're gonna fucking get now, man, because that's what they're gonna have to do,
Yeah.
And if you're a Javonte Williams believer and you don't have him on your team, like you're in a dynasty league, he's a guy you might be able to actually throw a late draft pick on for like 2023 or 2024 if somebody is looking to, unload him just because they're kind of pissed and they're thinking he's ruined. But he's got an ACL, PCL, LCL, LSD. I mean, he's got it all, dude. He's so fucked with his knee, and I feel bad. But with today's modern medicine, I hope he comes back faster than ever. Maybe goes out to Germany and gets some whatever the hell they do over there, and get back faster like Kobe did, with his knee.
What do they do? Anywho,
what's that?
What do they do over there?
Some plasma, whatever. They do some, stuff that you're not allowed to do over here, apparently. But
some hush stuff.
No, I think it's common knowledge. I think, maybe that's where Tom Brady was for 2 weeks and came back looking like Skeletor. I don't know, but but dude, let's a little fantasy football real quick.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about him briefly last week. Is my waiver wire ad. Him and Gus Edwards, who came back to practice this week, by the way, just to let you know. So get ready. Even though J.K. Dobbins looks like he's going to be the dog over there, but Kenny Pickett becoming the starter. The offense, the defense, just the Steelers in general looked like they call it. I can't even say that. He's
just kidding, but I don't know what I can't even pronounce it either.
All right. Well, I'm glad I didn't try to pronounce it. No, but Kenny Pickett, man, I mean, he gave just a straight up jolt of adrenaline or a shot of adrenaline to that Pittsburgh Steelers football team. Tomlin played his cards right when, he injected him into the lineup. Granted, they did not win. He had 3 interceptions, but, like PFF said, and I can't stand it. They do have, what have you. They give you tons of information at your disposal, right? But one of the things they said is that none of those interceptions should count for hit towards him. Like he had 0 interceptions. And I was like, well, all right. Well, one was a Hail Mary at the end. Chase Claypool dropped another one. And then I forget the other. I read about it and I was like, yeah, whatever. He had 3 interceptions, but he did run 2 in. I like his kind of game style for the Steelers and what they do in that offense with what they have in that offense. I'm sorry, not with Harris looking like he's kind of healthy, and those three wide receivers with Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and our guy, your guy, the guy that should be a fucking bear that we passed up twice, George Pickens. But I shouldn't say that, but that's, I like Pickens. Imagine him in Chicago. But anyway, what do you think's the impact there, though? Do you see that offense, like I do, kind of improving? Just look. And I'm going to add this before you answer. I'm sorry. So Najee Harris in his first 4 games, he had 10 points, 14 points, 13 points, 7 points. Granted, there was just the game changed when Kenny got in, more running from him, and he did not complete a pass. He threw them all to the Steelers or the other team, 13 for 13, or 10 for 13, depending on who you talk to, PFF or just the NFL. But Deontay Johnson just had a huge dip in the production. Claypool didn't do anything, had that huge drop, like I was saying. But Pickens with the he had 17.2 points, and Pat Fairmouth had his best day, 15.5. Do you see Kenny being the guy that's going to light that fire for the rest of these guys in that Pittsburgh offense and make them relevant in fantasy this year now that Mitch is gone?
I think you're going to get a little good and a little bad with Kenny Pickett. I mean, obviously he's a rookie. I mean, that's easy to fair enough to say from him. I didn't like seeing off the bat him throwing a pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just not a good look. And then obviously he went on to throw 2 more. I will say this. If he could continue to hit his outlet in Freiermuth, trust Freiermuth, they could establish some chemistry. He obviously has chemistry with Kenny Pickett. Or George Pickens.
George Pickens
and Kenny Pickett have a chemistry.
That's why they're so, simpatico.
Right.
They sound the same, right?
Right. So I think if you found somebody that you could trust in Freiermuth, You got a guy that can stretch the field in Pickens.
You can go get Pickens too, and we're gonna get to him, right?
Right. And in a second we're gonna get to him. I think, it all depends on for him, it's all gonna depend on Najee Harris. Get Najee Harris going. You'll open it up for Kenny Pickett.
You gotta give him the ball, right? You kind of have to in that offense.
He's got a good setup. I think he's got a good setup. He has potential to be, it's going to be, I think there's going to be some growing pains, but he has the potential to really take over that spot. I don't think Mitch is going to get another shot. I think it's done. Yeah. Let's not even bring it up.
Man. Hey, hold that clipboard, come in. You're the next Brian Hoyer. You're the next Matt Castle. You're the guy, the dude that looks good on the sideline with his helmet off, holding the clipboard, and calling in plays with, hand signals and shit, which is fine. Man. Good for him. They make a lot of money doing that shit. And it was fun rooting for you. Good luck to you. Wish you the best, but don't let the door hit you on the ass on your way out of here, man. Because you're no longer going to be a starter.
No, it is what it is. That time has passed. Kenny Pickett time is now.
Kenny Pickett, George Pickens show, I think, is going to be for real. I think in that offense is, Pickens. I think I read he's the Z receiver in that offense, and it just looks like they've, obviously they had those junior varsity reps in practice, and they've clearly built that chemistry. And to your point, and I just think that's the guy that I don't want to talk about anymore because we're going to talk about him later. But I like what they're doing in Pittsburgh. I like Tomlin's play. I just wanted to bring it up because I think fantasy players that you're out there and you're trying to figure out some stuff. You're at that second quarter of the season where you're trying to get over, whether you're trying to get to 500, you're trying to stay above 500, you're trying to win your first fucking game. You may want to try to make a trade. You may want to go try to, or spend a little more on some FAAB to get a guy like Pickens, or, drop Deontay Johnson, because you may not see Pickett's throw the ball downfield 50 yards 6 times a game, like, the other quarterbacks like Ben Roethlisberger was doing with Deontay Johnson.
That's why their use of him right now, because they're thrusting him into a situation that I'm not saying Kenny Pickett is Mitch Trubisky, but we saw this rodeo. We saw how that played out. If you thrust a guy and he's not ready to go, it could be detrimental. It could ruin a guy's career. I think if they protect Kenny Pickett by running the ball with Najee, if they make sure he understands, utilize Freiermuth, utilize your Kenny Pickett, I think you're going to find a lot of good fantasy points. Maybe in the back end. I think there's going to be a dip. But maybe in the back end, a little
plateau right now. Some guy they're trying to figure it out, trying to hit their groove.
Exactly.
Okay, I mean, you could be right, man. And or is he like that Justin Herbert dude that steps in and just? I'm not saying he's going to be Justin Herbert, but that guy that just exceeds expectations right off the rip. I mean, he looked. We're talking about this guy, and he lost to the fucking Jets, but he played pretty well, and he's not afraid to mix it up. He's not afraid. I mean, shit, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, And to your point about Najee Harris, he had 18 carries for 74 yards. So, I mean, I think you're going to see, if they're giving him the ball 25 times a game, that's going to bode well for our running back room in your fantasy team, right? Like, you're going to end up, you should see some production there. If he averages 3 yards a carry, he's at least getting you 75 yards. If he scores a touchdown, you're getting almost 14 points a game right there. So, anything over that's gravy. And that's a good thing for your running back, I think, right now, with everybody going fucking down and with running, with respect to running backs.
And those carries will go up for Najee. So you'll see more for Najee. You'll probably see more receptions. He'll probably be targeted more in the passing game, because, like I said, if Kenny Pickett is struggling, seeing the field down deep, reading the defense, he's going to need that outlet. And I think Najee is going to be there for him. Freiermuth will be there for him. So those guys should have an uptick. But I think, like you said, Johnson, Pickens, maybe he trusts him, but I still think those guys, you're going to see a spike later in the season. Let's go ahead. Go ahead. No, you go.
So I was just thinking of that game, right? And on the other side of the ball, Breece Hall, I think he's a guy, and is he on your list?
Breece Hall is on my fantasy team.
Oh, okay. So you had him this week. All right. Because I was looking at the rosters and I made some notes about it, and he seems to be the guy now in New York, right?
Oh, yeah.
He had a freaking huge game. He's definitely RB1 over there. But he played 66% of the snaps. He was on the field for most of the game. He had 65% of all the rushing attempts for the Jets offense. And any short yardage inside the 10, the 5, he got every snap. I like that. I think Breece Hall is a guy that you should try to go trade for. I just think that's a guy you should try to target if it is. He may be even rostered. A lot of guys dropped him week 1 or 2 when he didn't do well, and then some teams kind of picked him up. Last week, some people might have picked him up, but now he's a hot commodity because week 5 he had such a huge, or week 4 he had such a huge game. I really like him. I think he took a big, huge leap last week. And I think that confidence is only brewing for Breece Hall with the Jets. And I like what they're brewing. Not saying Zach Wilson's the answer there, but I think the Jets could surprise some teams. But fantasy-wise, I think you're going to see points from him. And, when Garrett Wilson and him can get some chemistry there, but also him and Corey Davis. But, I just wanted to throw that in there as we were talking about that game against, the Jets and the Steelers.
And Corey Davis had a decent game. I'm trying to find his stats right now.
He had a huge fourth quarter with Zach Wilson, who looked like shit the first 3 quarters, and then came together and had like 4 huge targets in the fourth quarter. Which
he had 5 receptions. Well, he was targeted 7 times, 5 receptions, 74 yards, and a touchdown. So he top 15 receiver last week. So he's doing his job. I mean, he's consistently there. Like I mentioned him before. I think he was last week's waiver wire, or maybe like the week before's waiver wire. It was both Jets wide receivers, but I went with Corey Davis. He's been consistent to over 10 points, and I think three out of the 4 games this year, if I'm not mistaken. But quality solid. I think you're absolutely right with Breece Hall. Breece Hall is going to continue to grow. I like where the Jets are going. I know it sounds crazy. I like where the Jets are going as a team. They're looking.
There's football being played in New York, man. Like they're actually teams are, the Giants. They got some good coaching over there. It looks like Bob Saleh's doing something all right. He's got receipts. God damn it, he's got fucking receipts.
I feel sorry for anybody that picked a wide receiver from the New York Giants. It's just rough for them over there. Man. I mean, thank God for Saquon. I was so wrong about Saquon, and I love watching Saquon run. But
RB1, I think he took over the mantle again. I think he's next year's first running back off the board. But
when it comes to this week, we'll talk about it a little bit later because I don't know about this. I got questions about this week. Let's go ahead and jump in. Let's go ahead and jump into our studs and our duds. We'll start with you with the studs. Who are your studs from this past week?
I'll make it quick, man. We've kind of talked a little bit about a lot of stuff last week, but, I like Chris Olave and CD Lamb as 2 dudes that I thought just doing well with injured quarterback situations. Olave had a huge day. He had 16.7 fantasy points with CD Lamb having 21.7 with our boy Cooper Kush and, getting it done. I those are the 2 guys. They weren't their top performers, but just guys that you did not anticipate to do well that did well. Outdid their projections, and took advantage of the situation with the hand that was dealt, if you will. But those are the 2 guys that I just wanted to throw out there as the 2 guys, 2 stars for me. That surprised me this week as stars and studs or studs. Sorry, Jesus.
Okay. Yeah.
What about you, dude?
I'm going with 2 guys from the same team. We had mentioned the game before. 2 guys from the Lions, TJ Hawkinson and Jamal Williams, both just had fantastic games. I mean, they were down, so they were throwing. They were trying to score. But Jamal Williams had 100 yards on the ground. So it wasn't just, they were in, garbage time and he was getting – so they were using him throughout the game and he was balling. Jamal, I think he had like 20 – I think in my league, he had like 27 points.
I'm trying to bring it up right here.
I think it's like 27 or something like that. Well, either way, I picked him up last week. Probably won me this week just by having the game that he did. And then obviously TJ Hawkins
carries 108 yards, and he had 1 reception for 3 yards, and so 2 he had the 2 touchdowns.
Right.
So 23.9 points. Huge day.
Huge day. And TJ Hawkinson just becoming he's starting to grow into his own, right? We're talking about top tight ends. I think TJ Hawkinson is a quiet, unsung guy. But if he
frustrated me last year,
if he could take this jump and he can continue to have games like this,
Jared Goff, man, is he really that good? Is he,
I don't know. I think Jared Goff is starting to become that season. Like he's obviously a seasoned vet. He's starting to, he's one of the leaders on the team. He's not a young guy. He's one of the older guys now. just looking at how he's playing, I mean, he threw a pick last week, but 4 touchdowns. They have the number 1 offense in the league. You got to give him some type of credit. You know what I mean? It's not all the running back. It's pretty much everybody on that offense, and it starts with him leading the way. So I think Jared Goff deserves some credit. I know there's some questions about. We're gonna get to your questions in a second here. Go ahead and let's get to one. Let's get to one question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's go ahead. Let me see.
Fire one up.
Let me see.
Pass the Dutchie to.
All right. I got a ton of running backs, but what's the best wide receiver going forward, non-PPR league? Who will finish the best fantasy wide receiver in the game going forward?
What
do you
non-PPR? What do you mean? Like you have them on your team? You just want to know who the best one is going to be?
I think what wide receiver in the league is going to be the best overall fantasy. I think that's what the question is.
Okay. Oof. I mean, Stephon Diggs, I mean, he'll probably look the most targets. I mean, Cooper Kupp gets targeted the most. He's got 54 targets this year, 402 yards. I don't know, Ivan. What do you think?
Let's see. I'm just going to go ahead and pull up the fantasy stats right now. So right now, number 1 is Cooper Kupp. You got Stephon Diggs behind him, Tyreek Hill after that, Justin Jefferson, Jalen Waddle, Marquise Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Devontae Adams, A.J. Brown, and Christian Kirk for your top 10. Out of the top 10, honestly, I mean, I'm gonna stick with Cooper Kupp. Like, he's their most dangerous weapon. I think that. I mean, unless he's knocked out of the game, I'm expecting him to continue to have the productions that he's having, and being that number 1 guy. I mean, there's definitely more receivers worthy.
Stephon Diggs leads with 64.6 non-PPR fantasy points, with Cooper Kupp trailing by 0.4. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Justin Jefferson. So yeah, I think it's Diggs or Kupp, but I think you're going to see Hill and Waddle 3 and 4. They're going to drop, and then you had Justin Jefferson finally have a huge week this week, week 4. Maybe he's back on it, on that maybe he's on the road again to domination, but just can't tell yet. So it's just, Bob, I hear you. I just think my crystal ball, I would say Stephon Diggs or Cooper Kupp. I don't know. What would you say, Ivan?
Like I said, I'm going with Kupp. And he's Super Bowl MVP. He's continuing to have great production. Every time he gets the ball, he's dangerous. He could take it away. Yeah, he could take it to the house anytime he gets the ball. I mean, Stephon Diggs is the same way. It's a toss-up to me, but I'm going to go with Kupp. Kupp.
And he gets the ball to the backfield. I didn't realize he had a rushing touchdown.
Yeah, he does. They do a lot of wide receiver reverses.
He looked so happy exchanging jerseys with Deebo Samuel last night. If you saw his picture, he looked absolutely miserable.
Did he?
Yeah. Sorry.
Better starter moving forward, Stafford or Geno Smith?
Good question. Geno Smith, obviously, statistically is showing fantasy-wise, yes. The Rams' offensive line is absolutely shit, and I just think that is the reason why. Granted, the Niners' defensive line is just ridiculous, so it's going to exploit any hole on your offensive line. But I don't know. That's a great question. I don't trust Stafford at all right now. I'd stay away. I have him in my dynasty league. He's my QB3 on my own team right now, behind Russ and David Carr. And I got some rookies sitting in my taxi squad. But
if you own Cooper Kupp, I mean, I would
that's
say
not
you
a
go
bad
with,
stack.
I'd say you go with Stafford, but
that's a stack. Yeah, I mean, you can't go bad there. Yeah,
I think Geno's going to have some good games, but I don't think he's going to continue to have the week that he had this past week. The Lions are dead last on defense. Their offense is number 1 in the league, dead last in the league on defense. So maybe that was, just them catching fire with a bad football team on the other side, and they were able to light it up. But I think it's going to be Stafford. I think you stick with Stafford. He has Cooper Kupp.
Yeah, he's a QB 10 for the rest of the year. He's he's QB 14 week 5. I mean, shit. You're probably right, man. It's tough though, because Geno is doing some things, man. Like, he's actually fucking playing some good football and doing. It's tough. It's a hard one.
I like Geno. I don't know if I trust Geno because he has Penny. He has DK. It's a week to week with me with Gino.
He's thrown for more passing yards this year than if you added up like his last 5 seasons. It's like
that's what I'm saying.
He's getting a chance to make the most of it, so it's a good story. We'd like to ride the hot hand, I guess, if you're streaming. But he's a matchup based guy, I think, right? Like you can't trust him. Yeah, so
it's a week to week. Like I said, he might have just caught lightning in a bottle.
You got to go Stafford then, based on that. I think. Yeah, you're right. Okay.
Yeah. So let's move on. Let's go to our duds. Jackal, who are your duds for the week?
Shit, I talked about. We talked about it a little already. I'm going to make this easy, and I'm going to say the running back room in Detroit just shit the bed once Williams went down. Mike Boone kind of stepped up, but it's just disappointing there. They were duds in terms of the fantasy production. And also Marcus Mariota, for a guy that I anticipated having to throw the ball a lot more once Cordell Patterson went out. He had like less than 4 fantasy points. And that's just awful. Not that I anticipated a lot of people playing Marcus Mariota, but if you're one of those guys that drafted quarterbacks late and you're dealing with a Dak injury or whoever else, Jameis Winston, and you're streaming, you had to go last minute. Yeah, it didn't work well when you went with him. Yeah, those are the couple of guys I thought were, bad on my end. Jonathan Taylor once again got hurt. What about you?
2 running backs. We talked about one, Najee Harris. He got 18 attempts, only 74 yards. Didn't really do much, in the passing. It was just rough. You got to be able to step up and help your young quarterback. I know they're in a transition. Didn't help Mitch either. You got to be able to help out your quarterback. Najee's going to have to figure it out, but he is one of my duds of the week. The other one is Antonio Gibson, 13 attempts, 49 yards. I almost went –
Ryan Robinson back.
They do. I almost went on the other side, the other team. I almost went with their running back in Dallas with Ezekiel Elliott because they have the same amount of yards. I think I don't want to say the same amount of rushes, but I know they have the same amount of yards. That was definitely a disappointment in last week's game from both running backs, Ezekiel Elliott and Antonio Gibson, but those will be my 2 duds for the week. I don't look for Najee to go ahead and be like this and Adrian Peterson type of running back, but we're expecting you to take a much more of a load now. You should be expecting yourself to take more of a load, and I would expect to see him, getting more targets, getting more carries. Let's just see what happens. It was just a bad week maybe, but he's going to have to step it up in fantasy and and for his team because it's rough right now in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, it is. But that's why they made the switch. And as we talked about earlier, that Kenny Pickett, they're on that Kenny Pickett bag over there, man. And then they got maintain that bad boy and get it moving. Hopefully,
we'll see what happens in 3 weeks. Like if Kenny Pickett's if he's still throwing picks in 3 weeks, we'll see how the Pittsburgh faithful feel then. Are they going to be like, put Mitch back in? Like, really? It could go either way. Like I said, let's hope Kenny Pickett, I wish him all the best. Let's see what happens. James Robinson, I know this is a question Bob had said earlier, the Jaguars running backs, before we get to our starts and sits. The Jaguars just ran into a buzzsaw that was the Philadelphia Eagles. Yep. The Philadelphia Eagles are just they're the best team in the NFC. They're the best team in the NFC. The Jaguars are going to be I think they are a good team. I think they're going to be a force to be reckoned with this season. Might even win the AFC South.
Yeah, James Robinson's fine, man.
I think they're fine. I think ETN will be fine. This week, though, I'll tell you about I'll give you a spoiler. This week, I would start both of them. I don't even care if you had them if you had both of them or if you had only one of them. I would start both of them because they're going to run into a team that gives up a lot of rushing yards, and I think they'll be fine this week. I think they'll be able to feast. But let's go ahead and get to our starts and sits. I'll kick this off. I'm going to go with Dalvin Cook in one of my games. Obviously, we all know who they're facing this week, the Chicago Bears. We can't stop the run. It's a huge issue. I want to believe that this week will be different, but I think I think talent has something to do with it. I think, maybe guys are playing hurt. I don't know. They don't disclose much up at Hallis Hall. I just will go with Dalvin Cook and that Minnesota rushing attack against the Chicago Bears. 200 yards, 200 yards twice, and it's only week 4 or week 5. That's not going to get it done. That's not what I want to see out of my football team. But that's why I'm going to take Dalvin Cook as one of my starts for this week. The other guy is going to be Damian Harris from the New England Patriots. They're going to go against I think they're playing Detroit. Detroit's giving up a lot of yards on the ground. I'm not going to same thing. Go with where the matchup is, right? That's what I'm trying to play. Go where the matchup is. Damian Harris against the 32nd defense in the NFL. And even with Smith, I would go, or Stevenson, excuse me. I would go with Stevenson as well. Start those 2 running backs. And don't forget the Jaguars because they're playing the Texans.
Did you say start both Patriots running backs?
I would.
Yeah, I agree.
I would.
Yeah.
I would definitely do that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I like those. That was good. I mean, I would always start my first round draft pick, but
Well, who you got?
Fuck. I'm gonna go with a couple quarterbacks to start, man. I think a guy that we talked about with respects to the Jaguars and James Robinson, I think you got to start Trevor Lawrence this week against Houston. I think you're going to see a bounce back. That 5 turnover game is an anomaly, I think, in this, I was high on him last week during the show. I felt like he turned that corner and was showing why he was that number 1 draft pick. And really was, like you said, they ran into a buzzsaw, man, a good team. And that's what happens sometimes in the NFL. You get punched in the fucking mouth, and now you got to respond. They go against Houston. We've seen how Houston plays, and so to that point, I think you could see Trevor Lawrence put up a nice day against the Texans. And he's going to be able to do it on the ground and in the air. I think he's going to have a big day. And the other guy that I think you should start is somebody that we don't necessarily think too highly of, as we've shit on the Broncos, but I'd start Russell Wilson against Indiana because he's going to have to throw the ball 75 times. And if you need a quarterback and you need, if you're hurt and you need fantasy points from a QB because you're dealing with running back or wide receiver injuries, you can bank on Wilson probably having his highest point production this year, week 5. So those are 2 guys that I would start. But a guy that I would sit, I'm going to stay with a quarterback, and it's a guy that we just played last night, Jimmy Garoppolo. I thought, he played great last night in terms of just, did what he does best. But they're going against Carolina, and I think the Niners are just going to run the ball, and they're just going to take care of the Panthers. They're not going to put the ball in Jimmy's hands too much, and for that, I think I'd sit him.
Yeah, Panthers are dead last in passing. I think they might be dead last in total offense, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, Baker is. They said today. I don't know who leaves first. Is Baker lose his starting job, or does Matt Rule get fired? There's way too many open college jobs right now out there for Matt Rule to be like, I want to stick around here in Carolina. Even though he's guaranteed $70 million, but if he takes a college job, I think that eats into some of that bread. But he's got to be like, get me the fuck out of here.
I think this question is for you. Would you put Wilson in over Goff then?
Oh, damn. That's a good question. We just talked about this. So we have Belichick against Goff, theoretically, right? I think I am going to go with – I think I would have to go with Russell Wilson over Jared Goff this week. Just something to be said about battling against Bill Belichick. I think that Goff could have a harder time with that than – other quarterbacks in the NFL, such as Aaron Rodgers last week, and Rodgers showed him the ultimate respect afterwards and just paid him high compliments with respect to his football acumen and trying to play against him. It's always a challenge. Do I think Goff is Aaron Rodgers? No. To that point, I think I'm going to go with Russell Wilson over Jared Goff.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah. Russell.
You have any other starts Goff and sits like running backs, wide receivers, anybody else? I mean, I got a couple, but I didn't know. Who do you got?
My sits for this week, and it's like I said, the one probably is going to surprise. The other one, maybe not. Kyler Murray. I'm going to go ahead and sit you this week. Ooh, they're going up against, like I said, that buzzsaw in Philadelphia. And I'm, looking like it, you really start, what type of team you have, what type of season you're going to have after about 4 weeks, right? After a month in, kind of like what you can and cannot be, right? Or who you are and who you aren't. I think the Eagles are a real contender. I think they're defensive wise and offensive wise, they are a real threat to win the NFC North.
Okay.
Or not the NFC, just NFC in general.
Yep.
The Cardinals are struggling. I'm looking for that defense for Philadelphia to continue to roll, put pressure on Kyler Murray, keep him in the pocket, don't let him go ahead and escape.
Yeah, it's going to be tough.
I think they're going to do a good job at containing him. I don't see him having a successful day against Philadelphia, and not a lot of people are having successful days against the Eagles. So to me, Kyler Murray,
they're a legit contender.
Absolutely. To me, Kyler Murray is a no-go. And then the other guy, like I said, a surprise. I'm going to go with Saquon. I'm going to go with Saquon Barkley against the Green Bay Packers in London. I'm the only reason I would be hesitant is because they are traveling. And maybe that defense of the Packers gets jet lagged, or maybe they're tired or not settled in or what have you, and they go ahead and they have a shit game. But so far, I think the Packers are doing a decent job at handling the run. I think they're going to go ahead and not give up 200 yards on the ground, to the New York Giants like the Chicago Bears did. I think Saquon is going to have a bit of a struggle. And, with the question at quarterback, Tyrod's out. Tyrod had a concussion.
Yeah, it's going to be Daniel Jones.
Tyrod is not. Yeah, it's Daniel Jones.
I think you're going to see a lot of Saquon in that game.
Exactly. Daniel Jones on a hobbled leg with the box stacked because now you have no wide receivers, and now you have a hobbled quarterback. Right, you have a hobbled quarterback. Saquon's going to be the focal point, and they're going to focus on him defensively. So I'm going to go ahead and sit Saquon. Yeah,
I hope because I drafted him in all my fucking leagues.
Yeah, I mean, if he goes for 200, then the Giants are doing something fucking right. But I just think that it's going to be too much for Saquon over in London. So those are my two guys.
You are right. I mean, it's something to be said about that traveling overseas and the whole nine. And I heard someone talking about it today, and like they got to stay up all night to try to flip their clock, and the whole just got to suck. But I mean, I do it for $20 million a year, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but Saquon, yeah, he could have a monster day, but if Green Bay has their way, then yeah, you could be right. But I think they're going to make him the focal point of that offense. You're going to see, you could see some wildcat out of that offense like they did when Jones went down.
You might see 40 carries. We might see 40 carries.
He could, and if that's the case, if he gets 30 or 3 yards a carry, he's having a fucking pretty, getting you some fantasy points anyway. Any wide receivers that you don't like this week, or that you think they should start? Or,
it's kind of a crapshoot for me.
Okay,
like I'm skeptical about the Bills. I'm skeptical.
Mooney.
Mooney. I'm skeptical about the Steelers. Right, so we could talk about the Pickens. We talk about Deontay Johnson a little bit. There's no real wide receivers that I'm truly worried about this week. I mean, maybe the Lions might have a bit of a hard time with the Patriots. I'm not sure.
Sit Gabe Davis.
Gabe Davis hasn't been doing well. He's on my fantasy team.
Sid Ayuk.
He had that ankle, and he just hasn't been the same. Gabe Davis. So I could agree with you with maybe a Gabe Davis. Maybe I wouldn't trust him as much.
Yeah.
I don't. To me,
sit DJ Moore.
I would say sit DJ Moore. Start anybody on the. I think I start anybody on the Niners. I think I would start either Debo or Ayuk.
I'd sit Ayuk though. I just think
you think so?
But I was down on Jimmy G when we were talking earlier, so it's like I can't be like, oh yeah, go after the wide receivers for the Niners when I just sat like, you know what I mean? Like, I just think the volume isn't there for Brandon Ayuk right now. I'm surprised actually. I thought he was going to have a better year. But then again, Trey Lance gets hurt. Things go kind of haywire there in San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan's got to, show why he's the smartest man over there. I don't know. But yeah, there's some guys that just, Drake London, he's got to go against Carlton Davis. That's going to be tough for him, against Tampa. Tyler Lockett, I like, but he does have to go up against Marshawn Lattimore. Like I was talking about Mooney. It's just going to be tough to see him. He had a breakout week 4. Do you expect a Bears receiver to do that 2 weeks in a row? I don't know. Fantasy wise, that's tough to put your money on. Do you want, I don't know if that's a safe bet. So that's tough for me. But
I might be off of CD Lamb a bit. Maybe. The Rams have been struggling. I mean, you saw them struggle a little bit last night, but I could see I could see the Cooper Rush Cinderella story, hitting a bit of a
Cooper Kush finally
wall.
loses a game.
Cooper Kush finally loses a game. I think maybe that just because the way that the Rams got embarrassed, I would expect that defense to step up. You know what I mean? They got a lot of guys with pride on that team. They got a lot of superstar names on that defense. I would expect them to step up. So maybe I'd be worried a little bit about a CeeDee Lamb or a Michael Gallup if you have them and you're using them. Dalton Schultz had no points last week.
Yeah,
no points last week. Was he injured? Was I
well,
off?
He did play. Like he
was in. Yeah, I don't know what was the issue, but he had no points last week. So
I don't remember his per snap count, but I don't think it was what some people were expecting when they played him.
Right. Noah Brown for Algier as we get to some of these questions real quick.
Yes, do that.
I would right now.
Noah Brown had a decent day last week, but I mean, you could go out, you could drop him, pick up Algier, and you could go get a guy like Alec Pierce, who's going to be a focal point. I think he's going to get a lot more targets in Indy. Drop another guy to replace your receiver if you really needed to, or just, I think that to answer your question. Yes, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty high on Algier, and I'll just go right into it because he's going to be one of my waiver picks. I think they're going to split. They're definitely going to split some carries and some reps, but I think Algier is going to be the focal point. I think he has the potential to be. I wouldn't give him the feature back, title right away, but he has good potential. Younger back can do it, obviously, in both the run and in the passing game. So I think he's going to be the guy to go out and get. There's the other guy, Huntley, who he had 10 carries. We talked about we talked about him earlier. 10 carries. He did a decent job as well. He looked pretty solid. I'm more leaning toward Algier. I think Algier.
Okay.
I think they drafted him to come in and potentially take over that running back spot. So I'm going to lean with him in my waiver wire this week. Go ahead and pick him up. He's available. And then the other guy I'd mentioned
16% of leagues, just so you know.
Yeah, the other guy I'd mentioned and I know I talked about them possibly taking a dip with a young quarterback, is George Pickens. Like I think the more he gets on the field, the better he plays. Like the more I see him, the more I'm like, man, I'm impressed with his physicality. You saw the catch last week. You saw the production as well.
6 catches, 102 yards.
Right. I think the rookie connection, them, with Pickett, them being two rookies, them coming in together. I think that has something to do with it. That has a little bit to do with the success that he might have. Maybe not this week, but coming soon this year. I think that George Pickens is going to find some success.
Buffalo, Tampa, Miami, their next 3 opponents. So, I mean, Kenny's got his work cut out for him.
It's going to be tough. I think you could stash a George Pickens and just kind of watch, because George, like I said, he's starting to have these games, but you're going to run into a bit of a tough part of the schedule. It's going to be weird. It all depends on Kenny Pickett. I'm still going to go ahead and maybe stash a guy like George Pickens. Who do you got on your waiver wire, Chris?
You talk about you bring up a great one with respects to Tyler Algier. Did you talk about what you'd spend on FAAB for him if you had to spend a little bit of bread? Like, do you think you'd spend like 10% if you had like $200? Would you spend, what would you make? What would you be comfortable making a bid? And it sucks making these predictions because there's people that are listening now that are in our leagues. So it's like shit, but
right.
There are people that, that I do know that listen that, are from where I'm, or, living where I am, and that they're not in my leagues, but they are in their own leagues, and they do ask me this. So what are your thoughts? What would you be comfortable with spending there?
Well, they said 4 weeks as a minimum for Cordero.
Yeah.
So it all depends on like what your desperation is at running back.
What's
like
your ceiling, and what's like you think it'll get it done in your league, but but also
I would go 40.
Oh wow. Okay, good. Okay.
I'll just 40, and I'm obviously it's just
you're expecting big things with that kind of investment, in my opinion.
To keep it simple, I'm investing $10 a week, right? But you need him for 4 weeks. He's gonna be starting. He's gonna be getting touches and involved. he's the number 2 guy on the
11 touches,
depth chart.
over 100 yards, over 100 yards from the line of scrimmage, man.
Right. So he's going to be getting the ball, and I think that if you're first of all, if you're hurting at running back, yes, $40 is probably not going to, not going to kill you unless you've been just spending.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless you've been just spending frivolously. I think
you can
you're
slip
okay
into
with $40.
the abyss if you're right now and going into week 5 and you're like 500 or you're 1-3, but you're scoring a lot of points and you just had some tough matchups. But like,
right.
I mean, spending. You got to go get the guys right now that you need. You got to be aggressive right now. You can't pussyfoot around the waiver wire or the FAAB. You got to go out and spend some bread, man. I really definitely agree there.
If you had Cordero, then it's a definite must. Like if you had Cordero Patterson, I would be a little bit more on the. Let me go ahead and spend what I think. Let me go ahead on the higher end, right?
Okay.
So maybe not 40. Maybe I go ahead and maybe $20 higher, depending on who I think might be targeting him. Because if there's another guy in your league that's like, oh wow, this guy just went out. He had 2 running backs go down. He's definitely going to be targeting an Algier. You know what I'm saying? So for me, if you're hurting at running back, target him. If you had Cordero Patterson, target him as well. So I would say about $40.
Okay.
We'll say for the month.
I think for the sake of argument and sake of our conversation, with respects to the snap count, with Raheem Mostert getting more touches and doing more, being on the field more, it's looking like Mostert's going to be the RB1 in Miami. And you're talking about RB1 potential with Algier. I almost feel that that's it's a tough call, but to win leagues and make money, you got to make decisions where, you're, you pucker up a little bit because you're not exactly sure. You got to make a move, man. You can't win if you don't play, if you will. Right. Would you do that? Depending on your running back situation, if you're thin, I mean, if you can get them, if you have one of the top waiver claims, I almost feel like you should do that. But
I would, if you're not happy with Chase Edmonds, I would.
I feel like that's a trade.
I would take a shot. Yeah. I think it is a trade just because the simple fact you don't know who Algier is technically, and maybe you're catching a guy that just got his opportunity and all of a sudden he goes off the next 4 weeks. Yep. So it's like I said, I just go back to Rashad's voice. It's a crapshoot because it is a crapshoot. But I think this one with Chase Edmonds' production being down, I think Algier might be a good investment there.
Yeah. Okay.
See, I picked Algier. Yeah.
Yeah.
I picked Algier, but he has a tough next 4 games. I don't know when I'd start him. Yeah, like I said, it all depends on if you're if you have unless you who are your other running backs? If like I said, if you're desperate at running back, I would do it. If you had Cordero Patterson, I probably would do it as well. Yep. So I mean, it all depends. I know you picked him up, but I don't know what your running back situation is looking like. Let's go ahead.
And there's other guys that you could go out and grab if you're worried about spending all that kind of money on Algier. Like you could go out and go grab like a guy like Kenneth Gainwell. He's available in like 32% of the leagues. They have Arizona, Dallas, and then they have a bye in week 7. But he's a nice supplemental back to Miles Sanders. Sanders had a huge day, but Gainwell's a guy that obviously is getting touches in this high-flying Eagles offense, so there's volume there for him, and a nice little target share. So it's something to think about. But also Brian Robinson, coming off an injury. Obviously, we want what's best for him, that's to succeed in the NFL after what he went through. Surprisingly, he is rostered in about 54% of the league. So that just speaks to the potential there, wishing for him to be back sooner than later. So you're going to have to be aggressive in getting him also. I think, speaking of FAAB, you're going to have to spend some money, but I think it's more like 10%, or that's a max for me. So if you had 200, like $20, but you could probably get them for maybe a little less, depending on you got to read the room, I guess. So those are a couple of guys I think on the running back room that I'd consider. You talked about George Pickens yet? Did you get to your guy?
No, we had mentioned Pickens.
Okay.
Corey, we can help you. We just need to know what the trade is. I mean,
no, there was a trade here. Where is he?
Was it Corey's trade?
Oh, dude, I would right here. You got to go Jamal Williams. I mean,
it's Jamal.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer. And I don't know if we talked. Where is the trade?
Was it this one?
Yes. I would take Freiermuth and ETN over Pitts and Pollard all day, every day, twice on Sunday.
I would not.
Yeah.
I think Pollard. I think Pollard might. Well,
Pitts has been god awful, and I think you're gonna get.
Yeah, Pitts hasn't been like. I'm just looking at potential. Freiermuth might get more targets just because it's a younger quarterback, like I'd mentioned before. ETN being behind Robinson right now. I mean, it's.
But he had a good game last week, and Robinson had a good game too. I mean, they
were kind of bottled up. I think they had under 50 yards each. I think they had similar. I think they had identical yards, if I'm not mistaken. Not Pollard. Etienne and Robinson. 32 yards and 29 yards on 8 carries for both of them, respectively.
What do you have in the air? I'm sorry.
Nothing. Neither of them had anything through the air.
Didn't catch any balls either. Wow.
No balls caught. So it was a rough week if you were a Jacksonville fan. I mean, they lost. They barely lost. They gave a good show, but as far as fantasy wise, I mean, it's kind of that's rough. I'm going to lean towards Pitts and Pollard because I think Pollard has a little bit more upside than ETN, but I do like Freiermuth. That's a good question. That's a good question.
Yeah. So we didn't really give him an answer because we both picked the opposite side. So, you're going to have to be you're going to have to lay the gauntlet down on your own on that one, man. We're sorry, Carl. I thought we had you on that, but.
Well, how about this? Which for Pitts and I'll really put it on the tight ends. Which quarterback do you trust? Right? Which quarterback do you trust?
I actually like Pickett over Marcus Mariota, but they may go to Ritter. Who knows? I don't know. But he's been horrible. Like Pitts has just been such a disappointment for where he was drafted. You could get Freiermuth and ETN, who I think is more, in a PPR format. I like that. I like that trade. It also depends on where you are with the set of your team. If you're playing well, I don't know why you'd want to make a move, but if that's going to put you over the edge because you're light at tight end, obviously, and you've got Pitts and you're trying to make it, I don't think you can go wrong with that deal. You're really making it for the tight end and not the running back, in my opinion.
He goes Pickett or Stafford, Logan.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to go with Stafford again. I mean, yeah, I'm going to go with Stafford again. I know it's hard to pick Stafford, especially since doesn't seem to want to go to Allen Robinson, or Allen Robinson can't seem
Robinson
to get open.
Fucking sucks, dude. Or what? He's all done, man.
Tell us how you feel, Jackal.
No, he's not as good anymore. He hit the age. He's 29, 30. You get it to a certain age in the NFL. There's only a couple of guys that can play after turning 30 years old in the NFL. Everybody else falls off a cliff. They can play, but they can't play. And some guys shit. It's tough. It's the NFL. The guys take a fucking beating in that league, and there's a reason that your longevity is not it's actually, I don't think it's called longevity because you just don't have it in the NFL outside of Tom Brady and plastic surgeons, but whatever.
All right, that's Jackal's take on that. With running backs being thin, what do you think Wilson Jr. / Mitchell is worth? Have Cooks, Dobbins, and Penny thin at wide receiver 3 unless Gabe Davis becomes usable. Mitchell comes back in a couple weeks, or he's going to be. Yeah, he comes back in I think 2 weeks. I think they said 6 to 8 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
Wilson looked good. He's a good complement to a Mitchell. I don't know if you're gonna get a whole lot just because when Mitchell comes back, Wilson's carries are going to drop, and I think Mitchell right now. I have Mitchell on my bench. Like I drafted Mitchell. I think he was my first running back. So I'm working with you on this. Like my mind's thinking, my mind's running for you. I think,
and I don't like Gabe Davis. He's too touchdown dependent, and I don't think he's the guy in that offense that's going to get those. I think Isaiah McKenzie's the guy in that offense that you're going to want to grab over the play over Gabe Davis.
Yeah, Mitchell for me, it all depends on how that first couple weeks. If he's okay, if his knees are right, if he's running okay, then I would say he might be worth a receiver, like a starting receiver He might be worth it, but I just don't think with the splits and him being out, you're going to get anything right now.
Well, there are
if he was healthy, he'd be worth it. I just don't think.
Well, if you trade them together,
I mean,
you're definitely going to be able to get somebody. You'll get a better wide receiver, but you got to do the comparison. Fantasy points for those two overall over the course of the next 6 games or whatever. And if that's gonna, you can't. You're not going to play them both.
Yeah, and it sucks because I have both. I have Mitchell and I have Gabe Davis, and they're both fucking me right now. So it's like, yeah, let's not get on that. I just wanted to mention I don't want to get Jackal all worked up again.
Stinks
About this Allen Robinson
stealing
thing.
money.
Stealing money. Let's go. Let's get one more. Would you drop the Davis? Would you drop? I mean, this is an easy one. Would you drop Davis for McKenzie?
Yeah.
I picked them both up, so I don't have to.
Yep.
I would. I think I would.
He did sustain a concussion though last week. He did get a concussion in week 4, so there is that chance he may miss week 5. But he had 11 catches for 97 yards and 2 touchdowns on 15 targets in his last 2 games. So he's definitely a guy that has got Josh Allen's trust, by getting the ball thrown in his direction. So as long as he is healthy, I think you're going to see a steady dose of targets his way. And I think he is this year's like Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, and that guy that's going to put up the numbers in that offense.
Yeah, I'm off with Gabe Davis. I don't know what to do with him. He's on, like I said, he's on my team. I picked up a bunch of guys, that were there specifically if Gabe Davis didn't go off. I'm thinking about moving him too. It might be the right time. Give him one more week, in my opinion, but it might be time to move on from Gabe Davis. Yeah. All right. Well, you know what? I'm about spent because I have to use the bathroom, but it was a fun show, Chris.
Yeah, man.
It just you and I, the two of us. Claudio comes back next week. Claudio's out there antiquing. Hopefully he finds something good, bring something back for us, maybe a prop or something for the show.
He's mean mugging old ladies for
old ladies,
mirrors,
beating up old ladies for an ottoman. It's just a great show. I felt like we were good back and forth today.
Of course, man.
A lot of good fantasy football, a lot of good football for up for this week. Going to be talking some more. So we'll be back with you guys next week on Keeping It Fantasy. Don't forget, tomorrow we're going to be on Keeping It 100 with Phil and Shane. Obviously, they're gonna be talking to Jared Payton, the son of a legend, Jared Payton. And Jared's becoming a little bit of a Chicago legend himself in his own right. Gonna be a great show. Tune into that. It's gonna be at a new time or a special time. Excuse me, 8:00 Eastern, 7:00 Central. So don't be late. It'll be there. It's a half hour early.
It should be on right around 8, like hopefully a little before 8:15.
Right.
Our time, 7:15 your time. I know we have him hopefully for till about 9:00. Really looking forward to it, man. Interested to hear it. He's, for many reasons. And the fact that, just being able to type the name Mr. Payton or hello, like just was mind fucking numbing. And like just his dad, whatever, man. I was geeking out, man.
Yeah. No,
I want to ask him if he ever wore kangaroos, like if he ever watched The Matrix.
Yeah. But hey, have you ever seen The Matrix? I was there for the unveiling of the Walter Payton statue. I took a picture with him there. It was a great moment. I mean, he doesn't know who the fuck I am, but I'm like, man, I just want to be, hey, dude, I'm happy I got to share that moment with you guys. Awesome. It was a cool experience. It was a really cool experience. He's a really good dude. But yeah, man, let's wrap things up here. For Chris Jackal, I'm Ivan Vargas. You guys have been watching Keeping It Fantasy here on the Tape Never Lies Network. Make sure you go to www.thetapeneverlies.com.
Yes, sir.
Become a patron. You guys will get more content, more breakdowns, longer breakdowns from the best Bears football talk or football information talk, whatever, blah, 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 on the planet. Yeah. So,
hey, real quick, don't forget to like, subscribe, and set your notifications on YouTube as well, so you don't miss any of the content that TTNL Network has coming out. There's almost a show daily. Pretty soon there will be. And also for the exclusive Patreon content, like Ivan just discussed, head down below to www.tapeneverlies.com. And we hope Claudio found something. Maybe a passing off. Anyway, never mind. Let's digress. We'll save that for tomorrow.
We'll save it for tomorrow.
Ivan, Vargas.
Hey, we're out of here. Peace.
Deuces.
What's your fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? What's your fantasy? Keeping it fantasy. What's your football fantasy? You come home after a long day. You need football in your life the TTNL way. You tap on your phone at the fantasy play. Pause, not like that before you take it the wrong way. You have an idea what players to draft. Then tap on a beer like genuine draft. Study all the players, look close at the stats. A QB first, then a top running back. First you hear Cool Kennedy audio. Then on your screen you see Jackle, Ivan, and Claudio. It's a Take Never Lies production. They keep it fantasy with Ivan's porno production. Keeping it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy, what's your football fantasy? Keeping it fantasy, what's your football fantasy?